I only boarded the abandoned ship to survive the night. No signals, no power, no signs of life. When I woke up, an alien woman with long ears was sleeping in my arms, and the galaxy was already on its way to reclaim her. The ship was not supposed to feel warm. That was the first wrong thing, he decided later, though at the time his brain was too busy negotiating with gravity and an old bruised rib to make a proper list. Abandoned ships were cold. They smelled like metal, old air, and regret. This one smelled like dust, ozone, and, disturbingly, something almost floral, as if someone had once tried to make space feel polite. He lay on his back between two collapsed cargo crates, jacket folded under his head in a gesture of optimism that had not paid off. The lights were dead, the ceiling lost somewhere in shadow, and the ship occasionally made noises like an elderly animal dreaming of better days. He had come aboard for shelter, nothing noble about it. Solar storm outside, suit battery low, bad luck stacked on worse luck. Sleep had simply happened. When he woke, his first thought was that the ship had finally collapsed on him. His second thought was that the universe had made a clerical error. There was an arm across his chest. Light, warm, definitely organic. A head rested just below his chin, breath steady, hair spilling across his jacket like it had always belonged there. He froze the way prey animals probably did right before becoming historical anecdotes. He looked down very slowly. She looked human. That was the problem. Skin, mouth, closed eyes, the faintest crease between her brows as if even sleep annoyed her. But her ears, long, tapered, extending elegantly back through her hair, were not human at all. They twitched once subtly, and his heart attempted to escape through his throat. He did not scream. This felt like an achievement worth noting. Instead, his brain offered several unhelpful possibilities: hallucination, parasite-induced dream, delayed concussion, or death. Death felt optimistic. He tested reality by blinking. She remained. He tested it again by holding his breath. She shifted slightly, frowned, and pressed closer, as if offended by his lack of cooperation. His arm, traitorous thing, was already around her shoulders. "Well," he whispered to the ceiling, "this is new." The ship answered with a low hum, like it was amused. He stayed still. Not because he was brave, but because every scenario where he moved ended with him losing either an arm or his remaining dignity. Up close, she looked younger than he'd first thought, though there was something settled about her face, a calm that didn't belong to drifters or scavengers. Her breathing was even. No weapons visible. No obvious implants, unless you counted the faint glow beneath the skin at her throat that pulsed in time with the ship's lights, which were definitely not supposed to be on. That was the second wrong thing. A panel on the far wall flickered to life, symbols crawling across it in a language he didn't know but somehow understood as important. The gravity stabilized with a gentle click, like the ship had straightened its posture. She stirred. He felt it before he saw it, the shift of weight, the slight tension in her arm. Her eyes opened, dark and sharp, and fixed immediately on his face. There was no panic in them, no confusion, just assessment. They stared at each other. If this were a smarter story, he would have said something profound. Instead, he said, "Hi." Her gaze flicked to his arm around her, then back to his face. One eyebrow lifted. The ear closest to him twitched again. "You are very calm," she said. Her voice was low, accented in a way that bent the language without breaking it. "I'm pretending," he said honestly. "It's going great so far." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make his brain short-circuit. She did not pull away. If anything, she seemed to consider the position, as if deciding whether it was useful. "This is not where I intended to wake," she said. "Same," he replied. "I was aiming for alone." That finally made her laugh. Soft, surprised, like it had slipped out without permission. The ship's lights brightened a fraction, as if encouraged. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea how she had ended up in his arms on a ship that should have been dead. All he knew in that moment was that the universe had decided to be strange instead of cruel. And for once, he was willing to let it. She did not move away immediately, which he decided was either a very good sign or a very advanced prelude to his death. Instead, she shifted just enough to sit up, the blanket of his arm sliding down to his elbow. The absence of her weight was sudden and strangely disappointing, like a door closing on a warm room. She studied the space around them with quiet intensity, eyes tracking the walls, the flickering panel, the revived hum of systems that should have stayed asleep. When her gaze returned to him, it carried something heavier than curiosity. "This vessel recognizes me," she said. "That's impressive," he replied. "It barely recognizes me as alive." The panel pulsed again, symbols rearranging themselves. He caught fragments of meaning, clearance, priority, awakening. None of them felt appropriate for a ship that had been rusting in orbit longer than most civilizations stayed fashionable. She swung her legs off the crate and stood. She was taller than he expected, posture straight without stiffness, movements precise but unhurried. Up close, the difference was clearer. The length of her ears, the faint luminescence under her skin, the way gravity seemed to negotiate with her rather than enforce rules. "You slept here," she said, not accusing, just stating fact. "I collapse with enthusiasm," he said. "Sleep usually follows." Another almost smile appeared and vanished. She pressed her fingers to the wall. The ship responded immediately, lights blooming outward in a soft cascade. He groaned. "Please tell me you're not about to wake something that eats people." "This ship does not eat," she said. "That's exactly what an eating ship would say." She regarded him for a long moment, then shook her head slightly, as if humans were an odd but tolerable phenomenon. "You are unafraid of me." "I am," he said. "I'm just bad at it." That earned a real smile, brief but unmistakable. The air shifted as gravity recalibrated again, smoother now, intentional. A holographic interface rose between them, layered with star maps and data streams that made his eyes ache. At its center pulsed a sigil he had seen once before, burned into a history archive he'd half-watched while hungover. He swallowed. "That symbol," he said carefully, "is not usually associated with casual naps." Her ears tilted back a fraction. "You know it." "I know of it," he said, "mostly from very loud warnings." She turned the interface off with a gesture that felt final. The ship dimmed obediently. "Then forget it," she said. "Respectfully," he replied, "that's not how knowing works." Silence stretched, but it wasn't sharp. She walked a slow circle around the space, fingertips brushing dormant consoles, each one stirring briefly to life before settling again. The ship followed her like a loyal animal. "You treated me as a person," she said at last. "Not a symbol, not a threat." I hadn't gotten to the panic yet. "You could have restrained me," she continued. "You did not." "I don't restrain strangers," he said. "Friends, maybe, depends on the crime." She stopped in front of him. The glow beneath her skin brightened, responding to something unseen. Power, contained but immense, pressed gently against the air. Not hostile, not kind, simply there. "You offered warmth," she said. "Unconsciously." He scratched the back of his neck. "I do that, it's a flaw." For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Distant sensors awakened, long-range systems whispering. Something out there had noticed. She felt it too. Her expression tightened, not with fear, but with fatigue. "They will come," she said. "Who?" "Everyone," she answered. He sighed. "I was really hoping for no one." She looked at him then, truly looked, as if weighing an outcome she had not planned for. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for his hand. Her touch was warm, steady. "You should leave," she said. He did not pull away. "And you?" She hesitated, just a fraction, long enough to matter. "I have been alone for a very long time," she said. Outside the hull, space shifted, and something ancient began to turn its attention toward the forgotten ship that was no longer forgotten at all. The first ships arrived without drama. No alarms screamed. No weapons charged. The abandoned vessel simply acknowledged their presence the way a tired host might acknowledge distant relatives. Politely, reluctantly, and with a faint vibration through the hull. He felt it through his boots as much as he heard it, a subtle reminder that nothing about this situation belonged to him anymore. She stood at the central console, hands resting lightly on its surface, eyes closed. The glow beneath her skin was brighter now, no longer shy. The ship responded to her breathing, systems aligning themselves like iron filings to a magnetic field. "So," he said, breaking the silence, "just to be clear, when you said everyone, you meant this level of everyone. A projection bloomed between them, fleets arranged in careful arcs, insignias of empires that usually pretended the others didn't exist. They were waiting, not attacking, waiting. "Yes," she said, "this is restraint." "That's comforting," he said, in a deeply alarming way. She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked, as if committing the shape of his face to memory. There was regret there, and something softer, more dangerous. "I did not intend to involve you," she said. "You didn't," he replied. "I tripped into this like I trip into everything else." A corner of her mouth lifted. Even now, he stepped closer to the console. The ship did not object. That felt important. "What happens now?" "They expect me to return," she said, "to resume what I abandoned. And if you do, the galaxy becomes impatient." He nodded slowly. Somewhere along the way, fear had rearranged itself into something quieter. Resolve, maybe. Or stubbornness. He surprised himself by saying, "Then don't go alone." She turned sharply. "You cannot come with me." "Watch me try." "This is not humor," she said. "It's coping." Outside, one of the fleets shifted formation. A warning disguised as etiquette, she exhaled long and steady. The ship dimmed, then rerouted power inward, isolating itself from external systems. A bubble of quiet formed around them. "I am called Empress," she said, "by those who kneel, by those who fear. And by friends." He asked, she hesitated, then quietly, "I have none." He reached out without thinking, fingers brushing her wrist. She did not pull away. "You do now," he said. "At least one, very underqualified one." For a moment, the weight of centuries pressed against the room. Then she laughed, full and unguarded, and the sound seemed to loosen something ancient. "You are impossible," she said. "I've been told." The solution, when it came, was almost embarrassingly simple. She did not return as she had left. The fleets watched as the abandoned ship moved, not toward the central worlds, but to the open edge of mapped space. Its signature changed, layered with unfamiliar harmonics. The Empress stood before them, not enthroned, not armored, but present. "I will rule differently," her voice carried across channels old and new. Not from distance, not from fear. There was outrage, confusion, threats. She listened. Then she spoke again. "Those who cannot accept this may leave." Some did, enough stayed. Power, he learned, did not always need to be loud. When it was over, when the fleets dispersed and the galaxy settled into a cautious new orbit, they were alone again. The ship drifted, content. He leaned against the console, exhaustion catching up at last. "So," he said, "does this make me what? Royal pillow?" She considered. "Advisor," she said, occasionally embraced. "I can live with that." She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Her ears relaxed, no longer tense with vigilance. For the first time since he had woken with a stranger in his arms, the ship felt truly at rest. He had come aboard looking for shelter. He left with purpose. And somewhere between rust and starlight, an empress learned how to be held.